These are the best of times, these are the worst of times. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Look at the polls. Look at all the polls across America. 88% of Americans say United States is on wrong track. That is reported by Forbes, July 5th, right after the 4th of July. Polls find majority of Americans say country is heading in wrong direction. That's June 30th from CNN. And yet, American optimism still shines bright. Isn't that the Judeo-Christian principle of America? That no matter how bad things get, no matter how dark times get, there is a faction of the American population that just sees bright, shiny futures for all of America. That's good news for Americans. And before I get into all that, I want to give a quick heads up that if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is the online platform for faith-based podcasts. Go there, find Bold and Blunt among the lineup of all the great faith-based podcasts there, and download it, listen to it there. You can also get Bold and Blunt, of course, at WashingtonTimes.com. Go online to Washington Times, find the newsletter section at the bottom of the page, click on it, find my name, and subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletters that come out at the Washington Times Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They contain all my commentaries that I write all day long at the Washington Times, along with my twice weekly Tuesdays and Thursdays Bold and Blunt podcasts. And of course, you can also get Bold and Blunt wherever your fine podcasts are offered. Let me read you this quick excerpt from this piece posted on studyfinds.org. I'm not sure what that nonprofit is, but studyfinds.org. Research in a nutshell is its tagline. Anyhow, this was posted February 28th. 2022, with this title, American Optimism Endures Despite Pandemic, Recession, Social Injustices. So you can disagree with the premise of the headline all you want, particularly that part about social injustices. As the left paints it, any time there is a law and order ruling by a court, for instance, that's called a social injustice. Anytime there is equality and justice for all upheld, the Democrats, the leftists, paint that as injustice. So anyhow, the headline may have a different perspective depending on which political angle you're approaching it from. That being said, it's the data that I'm talking about here. Let me read from this piece. We're already known as the land of the free, but according to survey data spanning 12 years, land of the optimistic would be an apt nickname as well. Despite dealing with multiple national crises since 2008, from a recession to a global viral pandemic to movements against social injustice, Americans still possess optimism about the future, according to a study. Now pay attention to the years of this study because to me, that's important. Across multiple surveys, I'm reading from this piece again, spanning 2008 through 2020, researchers from the Yale School of Medicine and the Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center report a remarkable consistency among U.S. residents' belief that their own lives will be even better in 5 years than at the time of the survey. Study authors say their findings offer positive implications for the health of the nation. Just my snarky takeaway from this, if you asked in, say, 2010 about the belief of a better future, I would say, yes, I believe in a better future because once Barack Obama is out of office, then the only way to go is up. And if you asked me in 2020, 20 about optimism for the future. I would say, heck yes, I'm optimistic for the future. Look at the last 4 years under President Donald Trump and how the economy is chugging along, how the rule of law is being restored, how respect for America has been brought back on the global stage. And then, of course, if you ask me now, in 2021 to 2022, how I feel about America, then I would have less optimistic views for America. And apparently that's shared by many others in America, because once again, let's return to these polls that I cited at the beginning of this podcast. 88% of Americans say U.S. is on wrong track. That was July 5th, 2022 from Forbes. A stunning 88% of Americans now believe the U.S. is on the wrong track, and just 10% believe it is on the right track, according to a new poll. You've all heard this poll. You've all heard this poll widely reported, right? Because too many people in America are finding out that Joe Biden is, A, exactly what he promised he would be, meaning a disaster for America, or, if you're a Democrat, independent, moderate voter, B, that he is surprisingly bad for America. Look, the thing is, Joe Biden, what he put on the campaign trail is exactly what he is doing in the White House. So for those of us out here in America who, A, pay attention to politics, and B, believe that the Democrats have been corrupted by evil influences, knew that Joe Biden was going to be a disaster before he even took over the White House. How could he not? The guy didn't leave his basement to campaign. That's kind of a red flag. If you want to be an American president, if you want to be an American commander-in-chief, you ought to be able to be out and about without stumbling and bumbling around and fumbling for your notes on the podium, on the stage. But Joe Biden didn't do that. He, due to the pandemic, the Democrats, oh so conveniently pointed out, was forced to stay in his basement and campaign long distance. So we conservatives in America knew that he was going to be a disaster for America. And yet there were a lot of independent voters out there, a lot of moderates, a lot of longtime loyalists in the Democrat Party who thought, hey, Joe's been around a long time. Joe's somebody who can work with people in Congress. Joe knows the ropes on Capitol Hill. He's going to be good for America. Plus, even if he's not good for America, he's not going to maintain that old nasty Twitter feed like the previous administration did, like the previous president did. So moderates, independents, a lot of young voters in particular bought into Joe Biden and elected him. Well, now those voters are feeling buyer's remorse, right? They have to be, because 88% of Americans think America is on the wrong track. Guarantee most Americans, whether they voted for Joe Biden or not, number one concern, inflation and the economy. And looky here, according to the same poll, inflation ranked as the chief concern among 1/3 of poll respondents, followed at a distance by gas prices, 15%, which really, if you look at it, is kind of related to the economy, related to inflation, right? It's all one and the same. It's hitting the individual in his or her own pocket. And when you can feel that pinch in your own pocket, that's when even the non-political start sitting up and taking notice of the political world. And usually the non-political, when they are driven to take notice of the political world, do so coming at it from one angle. Change is needed. If Americans who are not political are dissatisfied by what they are experiencing in their own homes' economics, chances are they're not going to take the time out to research candidates and find the best candidate for the long-term economic viability of America. They're going to just vote for somebody who's already in office. They're going to vote for the Joe Biden opposite. And this is the effect Joe Biden has had on America. 88% of Americans think that America is headed down the wrong track. These are the best of times, these are the worst of times. Yet still, American optimism shines bright. And where do we get that American optimism from? First and foremost, it's from the idea that in America, our rights come from God, not government. Government's only there to serve and protect. Protect those individual God-given rights and serve the American people. To serve the American people who elected the bureaucrats into office. So the optimism comes because those of Judeo-Christian principle, A, understand their rights come from God, and B, understand that in order to keep those God-given rights intact, they need to turn to God in times of crises, in times of peace, whether the times are good, whether the times are bad. So it is the Christian community, the Judeo-Christian community that keeps alive the hopes and light of America, because it is the Judeo-Christian community who understand best what America is all about. And in a phrase, American exceptionalism is God-given rights, God-given liberties. And so no matter how the seasons change and the times change and the political seats change, the overall optimism for America, the spirit of America, never quite dies, because so long as there is even one individual with staunch belief in a higher power living in America, that spirit of America, that hope for America, the light of America, is kept shining bright and alive. And that is the source of optimism. And so yes, 88% of Americans think that America is on the wrong track. But at the same time, those in America who carry bright the torch for American freedoms and keep alive the concept of American liberty know that the wrong track is temporary so long as the belief in a higher power, as a belief in a creator, giving each and every one of us unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, so long as that concept is kept alive and well. And speaking for myself, here's one American citizen who believes strongly in the idea of rights coming from God, government only there to preserve and protect those individual God-given rights, and believing in a higher authority. And my guest today has actually written a book talking about the rise and fall of America. It's called We'll Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America. The title is pretty self-explanatory, right? The author is Kurt Schlichter, and he is here on Bold and Blunt to talk about some of these political and cultural issues facing America right now, the fall of America, but also to discuss the note of optimism, the rise of America, the way back for America, the seizing of America back from the corrupt government forces that have oh so steadily stolen America's greatness right from under our own feet. Kurt, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on your new book, We'll Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America. It seems like it's doing pretty well, even though it just came out this month, July 12th, I think it was, yes?
Yes, that's when it came out. It's always fun to have a new one come out, see how it got a lot of pre-orders, so that was kind of gratifying. Well, I'm a military guy, so I believe in metrics. So, you always try and watch all the numbers.
Yes, you are a retired Army colonel, yes?
I am.
Okay, well...
Infantry, not JAG. I don't want anyone thinking that just because I'm a trial lawyer in civilian life means I was one of those when I was serving.
So, thank you for your service to this country.
As a colonel, I didn't do anything. I just showed up.
You must have an opinion on how the military seems to be going woke. And before we get into specifics about your book, what do you see happening to America's military?
It's an absolute disaster, and probably the worst manifestation of the kind of leftist establishment failure that we've been seeing over the last 3 decades. I can't say enough bad about how screwed up the military has become. I was actually there when we were at our pinnacle of power. I write about it in the book. I was in the 7th Corps Main Command Post during Operation Desert Storm, when the 7th Corps, along with the other units, basically wiped out an entire enemy army in 100 hours. It's a military achievement really on par with anything that Hannibal or Caesar or Alexander the Great did. I mean, it was just an unbelievable military achievement. It, of course, isn't studied in schools anymore because it's not woke or rumor nonsense. But there, at that time and place, America was unchallenged in its military power, but also its social, cultural, and economic power. And we kind of stopped trying. The military, like every other institution, has become infected with social justice nonsense. Fixing military's job one for the next Republican president.
Do you think that most of those who are in the military, in the ranks in the military, the lower ranks, play along with this social justice because they're believers, or is it just coming from a few select top leaders?
Well, look, the top leaders have all self-selected to play along with this. You don't get promoted if you don't. So senior leadership is in on it. Here's how it breaks down. There are a few true believers at the other ranks. Not that many. There are people who are just going to suck it up till they get their pension done. There are people who put up with anything for the ability to stay in and be in the military. They really don't care. And then there are the people who just despise it. And the problem is, as we're seeing by the complete failure of recruiting and retention, these people stop serving if they serve at all. They just won't join. By basically declaring war on normal Americans, which is what the Biden administration has done, joined and aided and abetted by the military leadership, normal Americans are looking at the military going, I don't want to join this. Forced vaccines, trans awareness training, a leadership who thinks the greatest strategic threat is bad weather sometime in the future, and of course who think that conservative Americans, who are the primary movers of the military, these are the people who go. You don't get a lot of Wellesley gender studies graduates or people from Santa Monica joining the military. You get normal Americans who believe in faith, family, and the flag. And now veterans are telling them, and keep in mind, most of them are legacies. The military lives on legacy. That is, your dad, your uncle, whatever was in the military. Well, now that dad and uncle are telling people not to join. I tell people, don't join right now. And that's heartbreaking. That's not where I want to be. But the military leadership has proven itself absolutely unworthy, both in a tactical and sense, a strategic sense, and in a moral leadership sense.
Even the Marines. That's amazing. That is. And I was going to ask you if you would recommend young people to join the military right now, because I have a 20-year-old son who, since the age of 3 or 4, grew up dreaming of joining the military, and I told him to wait because of what you just described.
You were absolutely right, too. Look, I had the privilege, as you know, I'm a trial lawyer in civilian life. I had the privilege of representing one of the families of the Marines killed in Afghanistan in that absolute fiasco.
Yep.
And I was present when the Marine Corps came and briefed the family on the tactical report. That is what happened. What happened. At the unit level, where the battalion was, which is about 500 guys, a battalion consists of companies and platoons, and then platoons consist of squads and individual Marines and soldiers. They performed pretty well. But the leadership put them in a position that made mass casualties inevitable. They were unnecessary. It was not necessary that this happened. This is a complete failure of senior leadership, military and civilian. They essentially betrayed our troops. And there's been no accountability for that. There's been no lessons learned. There have been no changes. They're just continuing on down the road of failure. And right now, the United States military has proven itself unworthy of its troops. And I served for almost 27 years. Okay, this does not make me happy to say. I'm not thrilled about it. But that's the fact. That is the truth. And the truth, first we have to understand the truth, and then we have to fix the problem. You express surprise that the military can change. The military is a hierarchical organization. Soldiers do what the commander checks. If the commander checks combat readiness, you will have a combat-ready organization. If the commander checks wokeness, you will have a woke organization. Well, this commander checks wokeness. And being a hierarchical organization, it responds to the commander's intent. And it can do that very quickly. That's why people, 1 year, 75% of Americans polled had great respect for the military. 1 year later, the same poll, 45%. It can change very quickly. The nice thing is it can change back very quickly. And we'll be back on the Rise of America. Talks a little about some specifics about how the next conservative president can actually do that. It can be done, and in fact, I think it should be done first because the military is our most important priority, the defense of the nation, but also because a conservative president coming in can get real results very quickly, put points on the board, set a template for reforming other administrative agencies and organizations in the government. But he can get a big win very quickly. But he's got to devote time, and he's got to ignore the howling, and he's got to be ruthless. And he needs to emphasize the commander and commander-in-chief, but it can be done.
Yeah, because everything that you need to know about this president, this commander-in-chief, came from the images of him checking his watch several times as the bodies were being taken off and brought back to American soil. You remember those images, I assume.
I remember that, and our soldiers remember that.
Yeah.
They're not human beings to him. Nothing is. He's an elitist guy who corrupts. He started stupid and became senile. It's not much of a combination. And he's a bad person. And, I can't for the life of me figure out why America chose this clown to be president. I guess, I hope they're happy that there are no more tweets about Rosie O'Donnell, but, I think the 13 families that feel differently.
Isn't it an outrage that people got so upset about Donald Trump's Twitter feed and completely ignored all the great things he was doing for America, for our allies around the world, for Israel, and the big offense was his Twitter feed?
Well, true. I mean, Donald Trump was the most consequential president since Reagan, and the best. Look, you got to understand that the angry ruling class, the people who had power who were rejected by the election of Trump, and it was especially galling because the essence of our garbage ruling elite, Hillary Clinton, a woman of no achievements ever other than marrying a powerful man and having an enormous ego for no apparent reason. They were angry. You got to understand, they don't care about his tweets. That doesn't matter. The whole dignity of the office thing never mattered to them. It still doesn't. I mean, look at the Hunter Biden laptop. It was a weapon to be used against normal Americans who truly don't want to be involved in politics and prefer a little bit of, for lack of a better word, dignity in it. And they leverage that against normal Americans. But they don't care about it themselves. The dignity of the office, they have a man wearing a woman's uniform wandering around. They need to be an admiral in the public health service.
That's right.
Dignity. It was all a scam, and I think people are starting to see behind that. You pay the $7 for gas, which in Los Angeles happens, and people say, well, at least we don't have any more mean tweets.
It's true. It's true. So our time's growing tight, but let's just start from the premise that you and I both agree that America is facing some dark, perilous times under this Joe Biden administration, in part because he's feckless, but also in part because he's allowing the globalists and bureaucrats and elitists in global government to steamroll through this White House, a very anti-American agenda. So back to your book, We'll Be Back. What are some bullet points of optimism that you can give Americans, actions maybe pragmatically they can take to counter this feckless anti-American administration?
Well, the first bullet point, the first bit of evidence is that people are waking up. And if you look at blue Virginia, I don't think it's a purple state, I think it's a blue state, or was.
Yep.
People got alerted when their kids came home and said, my teacher told me you're racist because you're a slave owner. Also, I'm going to mutilate my body to become a different gender because my furry otherkin, social studies teacher said so. When normal people saw that, they said, help me out, and they got out. People are acting across the country at school boards. They're becoming empowered, and they are working. You look at the polls, it's pretty clear that Democrats are going to get destroyed in 2022 and probably 2024 also. Finally, one of the things that makes me very, very happy is to look at Latinx, which I think is a hilarious word. Latinx Americans are now 50-50 Republican and Democrat. And when you look back at the Democrats, they had gone all in on Latinx Americans. This was going to be a permanent serf class that would always, exchange votes for some scraps off the liberals' table and would ensure leftist dominance in America for the foreseeable future. And Latinx Americans said, no, it's not bueno. We're not playing that game. We're here for the American dream, not this nightmare of permanent subjugation and subservience. And when they, and as they integrated into America and began to become prosperous, they naturally saw that the proper ideology was conservatism because it's a very faith, family, and flag-oriented folk. And they have moved away from the Democrats. This is devastating to the Democrats. This is just mind-boggling. They don't want to talk about it, but they had bet everything on owning this minority group forever, and this minority group said, no, nobody owns us.
Yeah, it's delicious irony that how many years they spent opening the borders to bring in what they thought was going to be a staunch voting class for them, and now they're losing that segment of voters. And actually, Donald Trump gained big with Hispanics during his White House term.
Yes, and we need to keep that up. Look, Trump was not the basis of this kind of populist republicanism.
Right.
He was just the avatar of it. He was the one smart enough to pick it off. You got human puffballs like Jeb Bush who wanted to keep, 2005 forever, and, the weekly standard Republicans. They've been rejected completely and totally. The new kind of Republican has got to be woke. He's got to conservative woke. He's got to be base. He's got to know what time it is. He's got to understand this is an existential struggle with the left, and we better use our power to win. You got a guy like Ron DeSantis who turns around when a giant corporation starts dictating to him and breaks the corporation to his will. Now, you had a bunch of conservatives that, well, we can't tell a private corporation what to do. How dare we use our power against it? Well, I'm not one who says you can use your power in all its forms against me, but I'll observe arbitrary limits. If you throw down, it's on. Only an idiot fights quote unquote fair. I learned that in infantry school. Okay, you want to play horsey, Disney or any other woke corporation. This is horsey. If you side with our enemies, you're my enemy, and I will treat you accordingly. So you can sit it out, and I won't mess with you, or you can join the other side, and you're a target. You pick, choose wisely.
Well said, well said. Kurt Schlichter, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. Your book, Will Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America, is a must-read. I want to thank you for your service, and again, thank you for taking time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back. Don't forget the book title, but don't forget the message behind that too. We'll Be Back, The Fall and Rise of America is the book title by Kurt, but also We'll Be Back is the message that we in America who are worried about the direction of America right now, who are part of that 88% polled in America who think America is on the wrong track, that's the message that we all need to remember. Don't give up. America is far from dead. The spirit cannot be killed. Remember that. The spirit can never be killed. And the spirit in America, in part, is one of liberty. Liberties as they come from God. Government has nothing to do with giving individuals in this nation liberty. Those are all God-given. Government is only put in place to preserve and protect what God has already granted us, blessed us with even. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, go to edify.app, the online platform for faith-based podcasts, and check out Bold and Blunt there. Also, get Bold and Blunt at washingtontimes.com. You can subscribe to it there. You can subscribe to Bold and Blunt anywhere podcasts are offered. And I want to quickly mention, check out my latest book. It is called Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. It's available wherever books are sold. Just came out a few weeks ago about the globalist quest for America, and they're speeding up their fight to crumble America from within because they have a golden opportunity in feckless Joe Biden. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.